Alright, YouTube, David Harry here, and in this video I am going to be doing a very extensive unboxing of the Blackmagic Design UltraStudio 4K Mini. Now what I'm going to do with this video is chapterize it because there will be a fair bit going on. So first of all, what I'm going to do is have a look around the box itself. Now when I do that, I'm going to be showing you all the stuff on the box to do with like specifications, to do with resolution, frame rate and whatnot. Now I won't be pausing too much or talking about that too much. So if you want to read that stuff, just pause the video and then continue at your own leisure. Then what I'm going to do is get into the box. Let's see what's in there. Then I will end up looking at the actual unit itself very close up. And let's just see what all the ports are about and what's on the front of the box and all the rest of it. Now, before I get into this, it's worth probably noting that if you want to do any kind of like 4K 60 HDMI or SDI recording into any of the M1 Macs, even up to and including the M1 Macs, the cheapest way that you can do that is with this particular interface. There's nothing else as cheap as this, which will allow you to do up to like, well, DCI 4K and stuff like that. So yeah, you're kind of a bit stuck at the moment because the only way we can do this is over Thunderbolt. And like I say, 4K 60 is only achievable on any M1 Mac right now with this particular interface as the cheapest option. Anyways, what I'm going to do, get into all this, then at the end I'll do a little bit of a summary and talk about a couple of little bits and pieces that may be interesting to people. Okay, so to start our look around the box, we are on the front here, and as we can see at the top, it says UltraStudio 4K Mini, and it has a nice picture in the middle of the actual unit. Now, just some of the points that it's saying here are, it is a portable Thunderbolt 3 capture playback solution with 12G SDI. Well, when it says portable, it's only portable from the point where you can move it from one place to another. It is hardly portable to the point where you could put it in your pocket. And don't forget, this does require mains power. You can't power it from, say, a USB battery or something. So as to how portable it is, I'm not really entirely sure about that. It's obviously smaller than a 19-inch rack mount, but it is hardly portable in my opinion. Anyways, it's got HDMI 2.0 and analog connections, allowing high frame rate, high dynamic range video in all formats up to 2160p 60 and 4K DCI. Well, I'll talk a bit more about that as I go through all this. However, it is not HDMI 2.0 anymore. It is HDMI 2.0. And then at the bottom here, it's given us a little bit more information. It's just reiterating the points again about 12G SDI, HDMI 2 and analog video connections. And also it's gone on about the fact that it's SD and HD and Ultra HD and 4K DCI format, and as well up to 60 frames per second. Also it says here broadcast and film quality 8, 10 and 12-bit support. I'll get to that in a second. Then it's also got a front mic input on a headphone output and SD card reader. We'll see all that when I open the box up. And then compatibility with editing software such as DaVinci Resolve, which is very important for me. Now just quickly, I want to go back to the point here of it being HDMI 2.0b. Now the problem with HDMI 2.0b, you cannot record 10-bit 444 4K 60 or UHD 60. So you can only record a chroma subsampler of 422 when you're at 4K and at 60 frames per second. So that's UHD 4K and also DCI 4K as well. And that would be 5994 and 60. Some of the lower resolutions and also the lower frame rates, you will be able to record 444 over HDMI. However, you definitely can't do 4K 60 as in, say, something like an Xbox Series X. Now, one side of the box is just telling us that it is the UltraStudio 4K Mini, as does the other side of the box. And then onto one of the long sides of the box here, and as we can see, it is showing an optional accessory, which is basically a 19-inch rack mount plate. Now, I believe that these are primarily designed for the Blackmagic Terranex solutions, although you can obviously use the 4K Mini on that as well. And then next to that as well, we've got a reiteration again of like things to do with the actual resolutions and such and frame rates. And then the other long side of the box is once again showing us another picture of the 4K Mini. And finally to the rear of the box, and once again we're just going to get some repetition here of some of the other information once again. However, we can also now see the rear of the actual unit itself. Now I'm not going to hang around on this because I am going to pull the unit out the box in a second and we'll run through that. However, if you want to, and like I said at the beginning, just pause the video at any point if if you want to read anything a little bit more clearly that's on the box here. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is just open it up and let's see what's inside. So the first thing out then is a bag which has got 4 rubber feet in, and each of those rubber feet have got little self-adhesive pads on the back which you then stick onto the bottom of the unit. Now you might think to yourself, well, why don't these come already attached to the unit? Well, I think it's pretty cool, and the reason why is because, as we've seen before, you can actually get these 19-inch rack mount adapters, in which case these wouldn't work on the 19-inch rack mount adapter. So basically put these on if you're going to be using your 4K mini on its own on a desktop, or leave them off if you're going to be screwing it into a rack mount adapter. So to the paperwork and such that comes in the box, and the first thing out here is a card informing us of DaVinci Resolve 17. Now unfortunately with this particular unit, and despite the fact that it is quite expensive, you do not get a free version of Studio as you would do with, say, the Speed Editor or something like that. So unfortunately you are restricted to only being able to get hold of the free version of Resolve. I really do think Blackmagic could have put the actual full Studio version in with this unit, seeing as it is not cheap. Now also as well, we've got another thing here telling us about the software installer. Basically this card is just going to tell you that Blackmagic have stopped inserting SD cards and stuff, which I think is a fantastic move. It just means that they cut down on the use of plastics and what have you, which is a great move for the environment. So once again, it's just saying go to the website and download the software if you want it. Also what we've got there is basically a welcome pack and stuff, tell you a load of things about Blackmagic, and then there we go, a nice Blackmagic sticker for you. And finally to the interface itself. Hoorah! And as we can see here, this is the top of the unit. It is just a blank top plate, so nothing special about it at all. And then this is the underside of the unit here, and as we can see, there's a hole here, 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 and here. Basically, those rubber pads have got little rubber sticky out bits which pop into there, and also, like I say, it has got those self-adhesive bits on which help it to stick down a bit better. Also, it's got 1, 2, 3, 4 screw holes there, which are going to be used for when you screw this into one of the rack mount adapters. Now one side of the unit here is completely ported for ventilation, as we can see, and then on the left hand side of the unit, as we can see here, this too is also ported and vented. However, on this side there is also a fan behind all that venting there. Now the thing I can say here, yes, you can hear the fan if this is on a table, say 2 to 3 feet away from you. However, if you've used something, say like an Atomos Ninja 5, that is a lot louder than this, so this is much quieter than a Ninja 5. Now if you've used something, say like an Xbox Series X, this is probably about as loud as a Series X. It's a slightly different sound, different pitch and whatnot, different tone, but it is not as annoying as you might think it's going to be when it's sitting only 2 to 3 feet away from you on a tabletop. And also as well, right now I'm using an overhead mic just above my camera. This is what I would do for, say, a lot of stuff like gamey things, and I've used this on the table when I've done game type stuff, and it has not come over on the mic because the microphone's basically picking my voice up a lot more than it's going to pick this up. Now I'm sorry to kind of stress the point on this, however I know a lot of people will be interested in the noise of this. I couldn't tell you what it is in dB and stuff from 1 meter or anything like that, however it is not particularly annoying, that's all I can say. So to the front of the interface and from left to right, the first thing we can see here is a balanced XLR microphone input. Now this can also send out phantom power to condenser microphones. So as you can see just here where it says 48V, that's the 48 volt phantom power indicator, which will turn red when you switch it on within software. Now the only thing with this is I've not used it, so I couldn't tell you what the preamp is like, so I can't tell you what the gain structure is going to be like for the likes of Dynamics, and also how clean or not that it may or may not be when you're using something like a very sensitive and very quiet condenser microphone. However, it is there and you can have it. Now also next to that we have got a 1/4 inch stereo headphone output as well, which I have used, and I can say it is really nice and it can go very loud, so be careful. Now next to that we have got a continuous dial here, so no hard stops or anything, just a continuous dial which controls the output for the headphone socket. Next to that, we have got an SD card interface as well. So once this is plugged into its host, it will then be able to supply another SD card input, which is quite neat because you may have this on a computer, say such as one of the M1 Mac laptops, which doesn't have an SD card slot on. So this will give you an SD card slot. I can't tell you how fast it is. I've not used it. Now, next to that is a bunch of buttons, and these are going to be for controlling the various functions and stuff. However, I would say in most situations, you probably aren't going to touch these buttons because most of the stuff that you're going to do for controlling the unit, you will probably do it from software anyways. And then next to that, we've got this tiny little screen, which although it is quite useful, I suppose, the only problem with this particular unit is that until it is being connected to its, like say, recording software or something else on the host computer, which is going to be able to control it, you won't see anything or be able to control anything anyway. So it's not like you can use that screen independent of the computer, because you can't. And then next to that there as well, we have just got like a data entry wheel, which once again is a continuous rotary controller, no hard stops, and that is to control any of the functions that you would see on the screen when pressing these buttons here. And now to the really good stuff on the rear of the interface, and once again from left to right. So the first thing here on the left is our 3-pin power input. So just to reiterate the point once again, you have got to use mains power with this. Unfortunately, you cannot use battery power. Now next to that, just above my finger, is a 9-pin remote socket. So if you've got a compliant device which is 9-pin, such as say a VTR or anything else, you can do stuff like synchronization, layback and stuff like that. So anything that's 9-pin compatible can line up with that socket there, which is pretty neat. Now below that, the first thing we've got here is the Thunderbolt port. Now just to be clear, this particular interface can only operate over Thunderbolt 3 or Thunderbolt 4, right? You cannot use it with USB-C. It's got a USB-C port there. I will get to that in a moment. However, that is not to use it with a computer. So you can't control it over USB-C, only over Thunderbolt 3 or 4. Now, there is one little caveat here, and I'm not entirely sure about this. You may be able to use a Thunderbolt 3 to Thunderbolt 2 adapter. Now, even if you can do that, and even if it is possible, I would probably guess that you may not be able to get to the upper reaches of the resolutions and frame rates and bit depths if you could do it. And the reason for that is obviously because Thunderbolt 2 has got a much lower bit rate and a basically much lower data rate than Thunderbolt 3. So you might be able to do it. I don't know. If you're interested in doing that, I would strongly recommend that you check first before you go into trying it out. Anyways, what you can also do with this Thunderbolt interface here is to send power back down the cable. And I think it's 40 or 45 watts. I'll flash that up now on the screen. So what that basically means is, say for instance, if you use this interface with something like one of the M1 MacBooks and stuff like that, you're going to chew up one of the Thunderbolt ports using this. But what you can also do is send power back down to charge the battery. So although you lose one of the ports for basic charging and stuff, you will be able to charge via the unit itself when it's plugged into the laptop. So that's very, very cool and neat, I think. Now, moving on, next to that, we have got a USB-C port. Now, once again, to be clear, that is not to control the interface. What that is for is to give you a USB-C port for connecting hard drives. However, you can only go up to 5 gigabits per second with that particular port. It is useful and stuff, but it can only go to 5 gigabits. Now, just to be clear here, is once you've got the actual interface plugged in via Thunderbolt to whatever computer, it almost acts like a bit of a hub. So you then get USB-C for plugging hard drives in, and then as we've seen on the front of the device, you also have an SD card interface. So both of those things become active on the host computer once this interface or this I/O unit is plugged in via Thunderbolt. Then obviously it sends a bit of power back down to anything that's compatible and compliant with that as well. And also as well, depending upon what you've got it plugged into, you can also use the audio I/O functions on it as well, almost like a sound card and stuff, especially things like your headphone monitoring and things like that. Anyway, Dave, move on, you're boring. So what we'll do here, we'll get to these sockets here, and basically what we have got here on the top are two SDI outputs. Now, one of these I believe can also be used for doing like a separate key output and stuff like that. However, we've got two there. That's also going to become useful as well for 3D stuff, which I know absolutely nothing about. Now, below those two, what we have got is our SDI input there, an SDI loop. The loop is basically just going to send you a loop through. I don't think you've got a terminate or anything on these units, so basically SDI in there and a loop through for it. Once again, these are 12G, so that's 12 gigabits, okay? So you know exactly where you're up to as far as 12G is concerned with these. And then moving on next to those, what we have got is our HDMI output at the top and HDMI input at the bottom. And like I've said earlier on, these are HDMI 2.0B. It does say 2.0 on the box, I believe, but it has been updated to 2.0B. Now on that point as well, I believe when it's updated to 2.0B, that accounts for certain HDR formats, I think HLG and stuff like that. So it natively will kind of let you record and play out HLG and HDR10 and stuff like that. I believe that's why it went to 2.0B, was specifically for HLG. There will be other formats also included in there to do with audio as well. Not entirely sure whether it'll recognize all of them, but anyway, it says 2.0B, Dave, move on. Anyway, as far as these interfaces are concerned here, so what we have got is our basic YUV interface near to go into the unit for component video as well. Also, we can actually like set that up for composite as well, which is pretty neat. And then also one of these is going to be your reference input as well. So basically amongst those four sockets there, you're basically covered for all of your components and composite and reference inputs as far as BNC connections are concerned. And then finally moving over onto the right of the unit here, this is our analog I/O as far as audio is concerned. So on the top here, we've got our audio output. On the bottom here, we've got our audio input. Now, all of these sockets, from what I understand, are TRS, which basically means that they're going to be balanced. You can also switch them as well between -10 and +4 for anybody who's interested in that type of stuff. So once again, 2-channel left, right, or channel 1, channel 2, as far as your output is concerned for your analog audio. And same again on the bottom, but that time obviously for your analog audio input. Okay, there we have it then, YouTube, my very long unboxing video for the Blackmagic Design UltraStudio 4K Mini. Now, as I've already mentioned in the video, there are a couple of things that you kind of need to look out for with this unit. However, and I will reiterate the point once again, and that is, you know, anything that's on like Apple Silicon right now, even up to and including the M1 Max, you haven't really got any options for doing 4K 60 ingest or monitoring out either. This is basically like, you know, the lowest cost thing that you can do it with. I do believe there might be some other units out there that you can use, but they are going to cost a lot more money. And there's most certainly nothing on USB-C to do this. It has to be Thunderbolt. Now, maybe somebody comes up with USB-C stuff. Maybe Elgato will do something like that. I don't know. But even if they do, over USB-C, you still won't be recording as high a signal quality as what this will, because over USB-C, it would have to be pre-compressed before it goes into the Mac. What you have to remember here is that a box like this is basically sending through the highest possible quality that it can do into the Mac, and then you determine in the Mac what codec you want to use. You can even go uncompressed if you want to. However, if you use something like the higher variants of ProRes, you're basically going to get something that is so close to being uncompressed that it might as well be uncompressed. But just also bear in mind that particular limitation due to this only having HDMI 2.0B, and that's the fact that you cannot record your chroma subsampling at 4444 at 10-bit doing 4K 60. I'm going to say 4444. That's obviously including the alpha channel, which you don't need when you're just recording off most devices, as a, for instance, an Xbox Series X. But you have to record that as the signal going in, and then afterwards you could then cut that down to 444 for an export. However, because of the limited bandwidth on HDMI 2.0b, you can't do that anyway. So just bear in mind, it has to be chroma subsampling of 422 at 10-bit for 4K 60. Now, once you go down to say 30 frames per second at 4K and stuff at 10-bit, then yes, you can engage 444. So that could be good for certain camera stuff and what have you. Or anything lower as far as the resolution is concerned, you're fine with that. Why Blackmagic didn't put HDMI 2.1 on this, I do not know. Okay, so I think that'll probably sum it up for this video anyways. So if you're into this type of stuff to do with, like, you know, capture devices, especially for the Mac and stuff, I'm going to start doing a bit more stuff about this, comparisons and kind of workflows and stuff. I'm going to do it mostly for gameplay. However, the same thing will apply for people using cameras and things like that anyway, because it's basically all the same hardware, just a different way of using it. So if you've liked the video, please give it a thumbs up. Also consider subscribing to my channel, getting all of the bell notification icon and all that funky stuff. There will also be links in the description as usual to all the stuff that I've used in the video down below and all that kind of cranky stuff. I need to go now. I'm flagging. I need something to eat. I'm David Harry. Thank you very much for watching this video. Take care and goodbye now.